Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Today, Quebec's Indigenous Affairs Minister gave an update on recommendations made in the Vian Commission report. But journalists were more concerned with the fact Quebec took Indigenous kids to court this week, challenging a 2-year-old federal bill giving First Nations rights over their own child welfare. Quebec is the only province challenging Bill C-92, which gives First Nations, Métis, and Inuit the right to create and maintain their own youth protection services. Quebec is arguing that Canada has no control over provincial services. The first hearings of Quebec's legal challenge took place this week, but Lafreniere says the court fight won't interfere with improving the Indigenous experience within Quebec's public services.
Mais on n'est pas arrivé avec un résultat concluant. Et oui, dans C-92, il y a une demande de renvoi, c'est vrai. Mais parallèlement à ça, on a fait une table politique pour regarder les enjeux en matière de protection de la jeunesse. On a présenté aux Premières Nations un projet ambitieux pour le changer, puis on avance quand même. Fait que vous comprenez que même si on peut avoir des revendications au niveau de nos champs de compétences, ça ne nous empêche pas d'avancer quand même avec les Premières Nations.
Naomi Metallic is one of the lawyers who was in court this week pushing for full application of Bill C-92. She joins us now from Halifax with a rundown of what happened at the Federal Court of Appeal in Montreal during the first hearings of Quebec's legal challenge. Naomi, thanks for being with us. To start, what's your reaction to Minister Lafreniere's comments today, and can discussions with First Nations be productive when there's an ongoing court challenge?
That can certainly be challenging. I mean, I'm a lawyer and I don't represent the AFNQL. Their counsel was at the hearing we just came from. So it is a bit of a political question, but, you know, I mean, some of the things that we heard is that, you know, what is Quebec is offering is not as flexible as what the federal legislation offers, and that negotiations can be very long and protracted, and also Quebec wants to always have the final say, and that is a problem. And that has been historically a problem. That's one of the problems that we have raised, not just with Quebec, but with across the country, that, you know, trying to get the provinces to really accommodate Aboriginal interests or Indigenous interests in child welfare, you know, has been a long problem, and that's why we need legislation like this.
So can you talk about Quebec's legal right to challenge a federal bill and how exactly that works?
So, yeah, you know, provinces have, and the federal government under our Constitution, there are divisions of powers, and government, you know, a government can challenge that, you know, a provincial government can say the federal government's actually legislating in an area that's our area. And that's what Quebec's trying to say. They're saying child welfare is Quebec. But the feds are saying, yeah, sure, but Indigenous people is a jurisdiction that we have. And in this case, they're actually trying to use their jurisdiction to do good as opposed to being exploitative and harming. They're trying to fix the harms of the past, which things like the Caring Society case has really brought to light. So Quebec's saying, no, nonetheless, that's going into our jurisdiction. I don't think their arguments are very strong on this point. And they're also trying to say that the recognition of the inherent right to self-government in this legislation is a problem, because when constitutional talks happened in the 80s and 90s, that was an issue that was sort of up for discussion. It was supposed to be sort of amended and put into the Constitution, and it never was, because, you know, the constitutional talks did not result in amendments. And so Quebec's saying, because it didn't happen in 80 and 90, then it's not part of the Constitution, and the feds trying to legislate is actually amending the Constitution unilaterally without our approval. And they're saying the only other way then that First Nations could get self-government is having to go to court individually, Indigenous group by Indigenous group, and proving it under the test that the court has set out for proving an Indigenous right, which is very, very complex and long. And so, no, and we've all said, no, Canada can pass law and to do this in a general way.
So we're talking about Quebec here, but could this legal challenge impact the application of C-92 in other places in Canada?
Oh, absolutely. Not a question. Like, if Quebec wins, if Quebec were to win, this would invalidate the act and its application across the country.
Wow. The first of these hearings have now wrapped up. What comes next?
Well, we're going to wait for a decision. The court reserved on Thursday at the end, and then we're going to get a decision. And it is, probably no matter what the outcome, the party who doesn't win will likely bring an appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada. So we're, I think, all expecting that the next round will be in the Supreme Court of Canada.
Much up in the air. Naomi, appreciate you speaking with us on such an important matter.
Okay, you're welcome.
Combating climate change is a top priority for northern voters during this election. Criticism has been cast on politicians during debates for failing to meet climate targets. But future leaders, Indigenous youth, say they aren't waiting around to take action. Our Charlotte Moore Jacobs brings us their perspectives.
I surround myself around really optimistic youth, and we believe we will change.
Over a dozen youth from across the territories are at this camp in Detta for 5 days, hosted by non-for-profit group Ecology North. They're learning about how to take action in a climate crisis.
United States.
Through activities like mock Arctic Council meetings, and learning from Indigenous rights knowledge holders like Daniel Tetzeli, who attended the first summit in 2009.
What are the human causes of climate change? So going beyond just looking at carbon dioxide emissions and fossil fuels, what are the structural causes, like the power structures in governments, laws, and societies more broadly that have kind of led us down this path?
We see ourselves as part of the environment.
Joshua Komanapik, a participant, teaches his peers about how Southern academics peg Inuit food security adaptation.
And some of those people, they've come up with something called the vulnerability framework. It would be like the function of vulnerability to climate change equals the exposure.
And how it's faltered.
As it kind of is a paternalistic way of looking at people, because in reality, every single human being on this earth is vulnerable to climate change. And it kind of takes away the agency that we have as Inuit, as resourceful, adaptive people.
Back home in Iqaluit, Siku Rojas sits on a youth committee council with the goal of making a recycling system in Nunavut using a machine called Precious Plastics.
I really want to make those machines in Nunavut and get youth involved so that they can get credits for high school so that they can graduate, because I know we have really low graduation rates. And then they could also recycle for the community and make products and sell these products.
Nika Silverfox Young is working to save the Yukon River salmon species by learning her language.
They were in a time of need, and Spider came to us, and he actually he taught them how to weave a net. And so that's why the word spider net and fish net are so close to each other. And that's one word in our language. And that is a whole story behind it.
And learning from elders on how to exchange perspectives in a good way.
My favorite thing that she said was talking about we have to be compassionate. So in my language of Northern Shoshone, so it's anki, so it'd be tolit anki. So it's just traditional laws that we have to abide by.
For youth here, you can't talk about the effects of climate change without unpacking trauma. But it's resilience they choose to draw on when taking action.
We have high suicide rates because we have high dropouts, and we have that because of it all leads back to each other, and it all affects one another. Everything connects everything, and everything brings it down. But if you fix one thing, then it can definitely bring everything back up.
Charlotte Moore Jacobs, APTN National News, Detta.
We're always wanting to hear what you have to say. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send us your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. The Native Women's Association of Canada is urging Indigenous women to vote. More on that coming up after the break. Welcome back. With the federal election now just a couple of days away, the push is on to get people out to vote. The Native Women's Association of Canada is now also asking Indigenous women living in Canada to head to the polls. For more, we're joined by Lorraine Whitman, the president of NWAC. Ms. Whitman, thanks for being with us. You've put out a plea for Indigenous women to get out and vote. Can you talk about why you feel it's important to vote in this federal election?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me on, Dennis. It's important for our women to be able to get out there and vote. And, I'm hoping I'm reaching all of the First Nation, the Métis, and the Inuit women to get out and vote because their vote counts. In order to make changes, we need to be out there and express our voice. We're no longer being silenced, but we're going out and voting.
Is the Native Women's Association supporting any particular candidate or party?
No, the important part in the campaign that we're running on our virtual site on Fridays is for the women to get out and vote. It's their right. It's only been since 1960 that we've had the right to go out and vote. And we're just preparing the women who haven't voted outside their own community to be able to, have their voice heard so that changes will come, and to listen to the platforms of the candidates running. But we're not, expressing to vote for this person or this party or what have you. It's of their decision, but we just want to be able to support them and guide them down the road to voting.
What do you feel is at stake for Indigenous women in this federal election?
Well, as you can appreciate, we've had the national inquiry into missing murdered Indigenous women and girls. And, the findings said it was a genocide. We need to be able to look at that. We need to be able to look at those 231 recommendations that were given for the calls for justice. And it's not just the Indigenous, it's all of Canada, all of the organizations, the institutions, to be able to implement what's taking place. The plans are there, and now it's the action to go on. Again, we've seen with our children, the remains of our children that had started first in Kamloops, 215 in a mass grave, how it devastated Canada knowing this reality, but yet we as Indigenous knew this has been there for years, and it was mentioned in the Truth and Reconciliation report by, the Honorable Murray Sinclair. So we need those points addressed. The women need to be at the tables so that we can speak, to the matters that concern the Indigenous women, girls, and our gender diverse communities.
Lorraine, we'll have to leave it there, but appreciate you taking some time for us here today to talk about this.
Thank you, and get out and vote. It's your right.
And for much more on the election, you can head over to our website, aptnnews.ca. Well, the Fairy Creek dispute over old-growth logging has been going on for more than a year, and the arrests continue. This week, lawyers for the logging company and protesters battled over a possible extension of the injunction against blockades. We look back at how this protest on Vancouver Island developed. APTN's Lee Wilson reports.
There is nothing sweet or gentle about the wreckage you've witnessed around here.
There have now been over 1,000 arrests in Fairy Creek in the dispute over old-growth logging on Vancouver Island.
Our determination to protect the old growth, that is now becoming exposed to the whole world.
The protest started in May of 2020 when recreational users and environmental groups learned of road building for logging in Fairy Creek. Surrey-based logging company Teal Jones has a 25-year agreement for Tree Farm License 46 with the province of BC, signed in 2012. They also have a revenue-sharing agreement with Bachidat First Nation. Fairy Creek falls in their traditional territory. The First Nation band has under 300 members. A Bachidat elder, Bill Jones, opposed the logging of old growth in Fairy Creek. He became one of the leaders of the protest. Late in 2020, Teal Jones sought an injunction to the BC Supreme Court to remove the blockades. This April, the company's injunction was granted. The Bachidat First Nation leadership released a statement asking the protesters to leave. We do not welcome or support unsolicited involvement or interference by others in our territory, including third-party activism. More blockades went up in the nearby Syracuse and Carmana-Walbrand regions. There was a call on social media for others to come protect old growth forests, with Elder Bill Jones leading the way. In mid-May, RCMP started enforcing the injunction. They set up an injunction zone, and the rest began. Escalation of the conflict between RCMP and land defenders increased. In June, 3 Vancouver Island nations, the Haiyut, Dididat, and Pachita, announced a declaration or a land agreement with the province. It included a 2-year deferral on the Fairy Creek watershed and part of the Carmana-Walbrand regions. They also called for the blockades of other approved logging areas to stop. The nations ask, while work is underway, everyone allow forestry operations in other parts of the territories approved by the nations and the province to continue without disruption. But the protesters kept the blockades. Joshua Wright has been at Fairy Creek since the start. He states people there want province-wide deferrals of old growth and permanent protection.
Talk and talk and talk, and meanwhile, over 1,000 people have been arrested trying to defend these forests, and the last sections of these ancient forests are falling. And I mean, this is an extinction of an ecosystem that we are facing.
While Teal Jones did agree to stop logging for the 2-year deferral in Fairy Creek, the deferrals don't apply to old growth in areas around Fairy Creek, including an area known as Granite Creek. In an email statement to APTN News, the Ministry of Forests stated those areas are not included in the deferrals. The areas identified in the photo are outside the Fairy Creek watershed and are a part of Tree Farm License 46.
We're in the generation now, and our
elders and leaders from other First Nations around the province have come to Fairy Creek to support the blockades. There have also been calls from the Union of BC Indian Chiefs to protect old growth. This week, the logging company Teal Jones appeared in court to extend the injunction against blockading the roads in Fairy Creek for 1 year. Lawyers representing the protesters are arguing against the extension, citing the climate crisis.
It's not enough to say, oh, we're not going to log this one forest. We need to say, we're not going to log old growth forests because we are in a climate emergency. And you do not log the biggest carbon sinks you have in a climate emergency.
The BC Supreme Court does not expect to make a decision on the extension of the injunction until late in September. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
Thanks for that, Lee. Time for another quick break, but coming up, a big celebration for an Indigenous radio station. Stay with us. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And we're staying with another one from Gail French today, as she sent this photo during her Labor Day weekend spent at Point Pelee Park in Leamington, Ontario. Gail, you must have had a great long weekend out there. Thanks for all the photos this week. It's supposed to be nice in parts this weekend. Be sure to snap some photos and send them to us at share@aptn.ca for next week's photo of the day during our nightly newscast. Time now to take a peek at tomorrow's weather. Starting on the East Coast, 25 with showers in Charlottetown and Fredericton. 13 and rain in Kuujjuaq, rain and 12 for Nain. 25 with showers in Montreal, showers and 15 in Chibougamau. Sunny and 19 for Sault Ste. Marie and North Bay. 20 in Thunder Bay and Sioux Lookout. 18 for God's Lake, 19 in Norway House. 26 in Winnipeg, 28 in Dauphin. 31 under the sun for Regina and Estevan. 22 and cloudy in Meadow Lake, 10 with rain in Uranium City. Over in northern Alberta, showers and 11 for High Level and Fort Chippewa. 22 in Edmonton and Red Deer, 23 in Lethbridge. Showers and 14 for Vancouver, 15 and rain in Victoria. 12 with showers for Prince George, cloudy and 11 in Dease Lake. 8 in Old Crow with rain, rain and 10 in Whitehorse. 11 in Yellowknife, 12 with showers for Norman Wells. 3 in Sax Harbor, 9 in Pawlatuck. 3 in Baker Lake, 8 in Arviette. -5 in Resolute, -1 in Igloo Lake. On September 30th, much of Canada will celebrate Truth and Reconciliation Day. Not in Nunavut, despite 85% of the population being Indigenous. Nunavut officials confirmed this week they won't be passing the legislation to allow for a holiday. There is a territorial election coming in October, and they say they want to leave the decision to the next government. According to one former Inuit politician, the will is there, the logistics are the challenge.
The pandemic, it's still, affecting our territory, and at the same time, the last session of the Legislative Assembly. So there's just, a lot of moving parts that you need to sort of take into consideration.
A radio station in Manitoba is celebrating its 50th birthday. Native Communications Incorporated started its half-century journey in Thompson, and it's still going strong all over. APTN's Michelle Carlinzig caught up with General Manager David McLeod at the celebration.
NCI-FM hit the airwaves in Manitoba in 1971, when Indigenous voices in media were lacking. Today, the country music station hit 50 years on the air. CEO David McLeod has been there since day one. He says there's a lot to celebrate.
Why did people like NCI? Because people can reflect, they can hear themselves, they know the community. There doesn't need to be an explanation, there's a lot known.
The station started in the northern city of Thompson. It grew quickly into a network of 57 transmitters across the province, funded by a weekly radio bingo program. Don McIver was instrumental in getting the whole thing started.
And I think that's what's so important about the Indigenous voice and the Indigenous stories, is that when it comes from our community, there's a different grasp and understanding, particularly when it comes to language as well, and culture and all those other things.
A celebration at the radio station saw Indigenous music, an unveiling of a mural by local artist Jordan Stranger, and tons of trips down memory lane. McLeod credits community members for keeping NCI alive and well all these years.
At the end of the day, it's not about equipment. It's not about the technical part. It's about connecting with people.
You can find NCI-FM at 105.5 on your FM radio dial. Michelle Carlinzig, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And a very happy birthday to NCI, and some great stock footage there of David. He's always got a great shirt. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for APTN National News Weekend and get caught up on the week's events. Election Day is Monday, and we will have special coverage of Election 2021 that night from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight. You can find all of our election coverage and much more over on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.